I'm here in Finale Ligure, and the hillside is absolutely littered with pros on training camps and mainly trying to dial in that suspension setup ready for the racing season next year. Now, obviously suspension setup is absolutely crucial for the pros to gain every second in that racing scenario, but it's really crucial for riders like yourself and I as well. And today I'm going to try and physically demonstrate how important suspension setup is. I'm going to do a few tests, taking the air pressure, compression and rebound to the extremes in either direction to show you what difference it makes. So, well, let's hit the hillside. Now let's just have a quick word on volume spacers, because I'm not going to do a back-to-back test on volume spacers, but they are really key in just fine-tuning that stroke for you. So if you have an air fork, obviously you have a certain volume of air in that fork, and as your bike goes through its travel, that air starts to compress and it will start to get firmer through the bottom of the stroke. However, if you find that you have your settings perfect at the end of this video, you have your sag set up, you have your compression and rebound set up, and you like the initial stroke and you like the mid stroke and everything's working fine, but you're bottoming out, then it might be time to start considering some air tokens, because what that will do is reduce the volume in your forks and it will start to ramp up and get firmer quicker through the bottom of the stroke, and it will hopefully save you from bottoming out too often. Equally, if you're a light rider like myself and you find they're getting too firm towards the bottom of the stroke and maybe you're not using all of your travel, then do open up your forks and check to see if there's any volume spacers in there, because if there are, then maybe you want less. But do head over to my other video which shows you how to change volume spacers, because you will need some safety tips. You'll need to be removing air before you change those. So I'll leave the link of that video in the description below. So the easiest thing to change on a set of air forks or a rear air can is obviously the air, and it's something you need to be setting up as soon as you get your bike. And what you need to do is set that up with your riding kit, your usual riding kit. So if you have a backpack all the time, then set it up with a backpack on, because what you're doing is you're setting the air pressure so that it meets a certain percentage of sag. And by sag, I mean the travel moves into its suspension a certain percentage in order to give you an understanding of how much support that suspension is going to give you when you're just a static rider. Now, this is kind of a base level that manufacturers use to kind of give you an initial setting, but it is just an initial setting. You might go out to the trails and find that it's a little oversprung, perhaps it's too firm, and you might want to release some air pressure in order to have more sag and then feel a little softer. You might find that it's undersprung, you might find that it's too soft, perhaps you've got too much sag and you might want to add a little bit of air pressure, and this will really affect your riding, and it will be determined by you as a rider, your style and the kind of terrain that you like to ride. So let me show you what undersprung and oversprung looks like so you can get an idea of what it'll do to you out on the trail. So I'm going to do this feature here with 15% sag, so quite oversprung for me. I usually like 25%, and then I'm going to do it at 50% sag, so that's really soft and that's undersprung. So let's see the difference. Oh, we have a bottom out for sure. So yeah, obviously I've used all of my travel and just completely hit the fork against itself. A good reminder, well, it's the extreme. It shows you do need air in your fork to support your body weight. And manufacturers go for 25 to 30% because that's just your body weight. When you start riding features like this, you then have your body weight multiplied with the force going into the ground at speed, and you go through all your travel. So yeah, just a reminder, you do need to set up your sag. Not only have I used all my travel, but when I was riding along afterwards, it absolutely just stayed in that travel and didn't extend very quickly. And also, if you're going to be bottoming out a lot, you might want to play around with spacers, as I've mentioned, to stop you bottoming out. But if you're bottoming out a lot, like multiple times on a trail, then you've probably not got enough air in there. Now, once your sag is set and your air pressure is right for you, if you get to a track that's particularly gnarly or different and it just doesn't feel right, if it feels too firm or too soft, then you need to be playing with your compression dials, not the air pressure. So let's talk about damping. Now, your compression dials on your fork adjusts the amount of damping it will apply to compression. So what that means is the amount of resistance it will add to your forks compressing. So if you were to dial that on, if you were to move compression towards a plus sign or to add compression, then what you're doing is adding the damping, you're adding the resistance, and that will make your fork feel a lot firmer, but it will also give it a more supportive feel. Perhaps you're G'ing out a lot, perhaps you're hitting big jumps and not getting enough support. Equally, if you were to wind it towards the open setting or the negative line and having less compression damping, then you will have less support, but it will also feel a lot softer in the initial stroke. Now, on some high-end forks, you might actually have high-speed and low-speed compression damping. So that might be a HSC or an LSC written on your dials. And what that does is that separates out two different features of the compression damping. So, for example, the high-speed compression damping is when you hit things that are square-edged or you take big jumps and your forks compress really quickly, so your high-speed compressions. And so dialing more compression onto that will give you more support in those scenarios, so it won't go through all the travel very easily on those big hits. Now, the low speed compression damping is all of your low speed movements. So when your fork actuates on a slower scenario, so that could be going around a corner and just bobbing into your travel. It might even be from your pedal bob as well. It will just be a slow movement of your forks. So dialing on that compression for the low speed will give you more support in those scenarios. So it is handy to separate those out sometimes if you want something that's soft on fast, chattery terrain, but really supportive when you're going around corners and pedaling out of them. Right, the test. Okay, let's play with some compression damping. I've got a nice rock garden up there. Now I'm going to go to fully open. So I've wound that out so there's no compression damping on the high speed, and fully open on my low speed dials as well. So no support on my low speed movements either. And let's hit that rock garden up there and see what it feels like. And then we'll wind it back on and see what that feels like. So yeah, let's go. Oh, that is a fun bit of trail. I've pretty much used all of my travel as well, even though I've got quite a reasonable amount of air in there. I do suspect that a lot of that was me braking to a finish as well and just diving through my forks. So that is lack of low speed compression. Anyway, let's set them all to maximum compression on low speed and high speed. So that is a lot of clicks. Done. Let's try it again. Reset the O-ring, the bottom altometer. That's really cool. Look how much travel I've used. Like maybe like 50% of my travel. So obviously the resistance is not allowing my fork to compress. But in reality, it felt good. It felt like the front end stayed up and my geometry could kind of take the hits, because obviously if you're diving through all your travel, then your head angle's gonna be steepening up and well, you're ruining all that good geometry on your nice enduro bike. So yeah, I kind of liked it, but I think it's gonna get tiresome on a long track if you don't have the arm strength for it. So there is a balance to be had. I can kind of see why riders like Loic Bruni have like massively firm forks, because it's kind of a nice feeling. In fact, you know, the initial stroke was quite nice. It didn't dive in and just sit in the middle, which can sometimes your forks can feel really firm, and it's because there's not enough air in them or not enough support, and you're just sitting in the mid stroke in that sort of firm bit where all the air is all compressed. So this is just sort of proof that you do need to play with things. So I'm going to do one more run on a setting that I think is right, and that is not much high speed compression damping and a little bit more support on the low speed. So let me try that out. Right, as you can see, I'm somewhere in the middle now, because I did suspect that letting out all that low speed compression damping did dive my forks at the end, and that's why I used, you know, almost 90% of my travel on the first run. And now we're somewhere in the middle, and to be honest, it felt supportive when I came off a little drop and a corner into that rock garden, but it was really buttery smooth and sensitive on the rock garden, and that's how I like it. But you know, that's why pros will come to this area and session a trail over and over and over again and change 1 or 2 clicks on everything just to get it dialed in for their personal preference. Compression damping definitely is a personal preference thing, and I think you should go to your favorite trail and play with it. Go to the extremes, go in the middle, and then try and change things 1 or 2 clicks at a time to see how that feels. Now, most forks will have a rebound dial on the underside, and this controls how quickly or how easy it is for a fork to retract. So adding more rebound or more rebound damping is adding more resistance to how quickly that fork retracts or extends back out. Now, if you were to have less rebound damping, then there would be less resistance on that rebound. So it will make it easier, and that means it will retract a lot faster. Now, sometimes you actually have slow and fast written on this dial, or you might have a tortoise and a hare indicating whether it's going to be a slow or a fast movement. Now, rebound can be a bit of personal preference. Perhaps if you were a faster rider and you were coming down a really chattery descent like this, you might want it to react quickly. You might want it to rebound fast so that when you compress, it goes back out quickly and it returns to its normal form, so you can track the ground at the same rate that you're riding. However, sometimes if it's too quick for your style of riding, then it could rebound quickly into you and make the ground feel even firmer than it actually is. But equally, you don't want rebound to be too slow, because if it doesn't retract, every time your fork compresses, it gets further in and further in, and it starts to pack up and feel really firm. So sometimes your fork can feel really firm because it's not rebounding quick enough, and you might want to speed it up so that it can return to its nice, soft, supple initial stroke as an extended fork. I do think there's a bit of a relationship on your weight as well. So if you are a heavy rider and you're diving into your forks a lot, then your forks are going to rebound quite quickly quickly because of the energy return, in which case if you're a heavy or a fast rider, you might want to have a slightly slower rebound. Whereas for me, because I'm quite light, I don't often get that energy return. I don't push my forks right down into the travel a lot, so I might want a quicker rebound. But that's just proof again that it's personal preference and geometry, and you do need to play with it. Anyway, I'm going to set these to the extremes and show you what actually happens out on the trail. You can like really feel the bars kick back into my arms. I literally hit a root up there and it almost like jarred me backwards, which throws your body weight and gives you a bit of a like a rodeo scenario, which isn't great. So I do run my rebound quite fast usually, so I'm sort of used to it, but that was way too fast. Definitely need to calm it down. But let's see what it's like with completely all of the rebound damping on. See what that does. Okay, so that definitely felt calmer, I would say, because the bike wasn't retracting into my body. So this was a lot calmer. However, in the slower sections where I was riding a bit slower and diving into my compression, because it wasn't returning as quickly as I wanted it to, it kind of, the dive was almost over exaggerated. So it felt like it was diving when really it just wasn't returning as quickly as I wanted it to. So yeah, that's just proof that you do want to play with rebound depending on your riding terrain or your style or how fast you're going as a rider, or even on that day. You might want to play with rebound depending on different tracks as well. I think rebound has a massive impact, probably one of the biggest impacts. And you can see I haven't used any more or less compression. That still works independently. It's just how the bike feels after it's compressed. Anyway, enough waffle. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set it into the sort of mid to fast range, because I think that's about right for me, and just see how that fares as a final trail. Well, there we have it. That is air, compression and rebound explained, and hopefully this video has gone a long way to showing you the physical effects that those three things have on your bike and your suspension. And hopefully that will give you more confidence to go off and play with it yourself, because it does depend. You are the expert in you. So trust your instincts and set it up how you like it. And if you want any more detailed videos on how to set up your suspension or how to change air tokens, then do check out our channel, because I've done a few of those in previous years. So I'll leave the link in the description below to some, and hopefully you will set up your suspension perfectly. Thanks.